Good evening. At this time, I'd like to call to order the public hearing at the Twinsburg Government Center for Tuesday, June 11th.
Okay.
Shannon, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Fury?
Here.
Mr. Post?
Here.
Mr. Bellin?
Here.
Mrs. Labby? Here. Mrs. Walker?
Present.
Mr. Bonacci?
Here.
Mr. Barr?
Here.
Okay. All right. We are going to have a public hearing on ordinance 68, 2024, which is an ordinance amending Part 11 of the city's zoning and development codes. I'd also like to bring to your attention at this time that we have been we're becoming aware of a 30-day notice issue, and was that the day we posted this, they counted it as one of the days, so we only had 29. So there's going to be another public hearing, and that will be held on July 11th. That'll be a Thursday, July 11th, at 6:30 in council chambers. So there'll be an additional public hearing to make sure that we're in line with the 30-day notification for the hearing. That being said, Shan, do you have the list, or is it down there? There's a list of sign-up sheet. Let me go get it.
I have it.
Okay.
I have it.
Then we'll call you up. You get 5 minutes.
Bill. Rebecca wants to talk first.
Oh, no, it's fine. Excuse me, Mrs. Ziegler, you want to come up?
Yeah, you already said what I was going to say, but I'll just go up here. Rebecca Ziegler, good evening. I'm glad that you brought up the part that we're bringing up another public hearing. We've received more feedback in the last 48 hours, great feedback, than we have almost during this entire process, so it's good that it's working. People are here. So I'm glad that we're offering a second public hearing that does update the schedule a little bit. This is the second reading will be tonight, first public hearing, and then we'll know that on the 25th of June will be the third reading, the 4th will be July 9th, and then the 5th reading, and hopefully the approval, will be on the 11th along with that second reading. So as always, one other item that we are going to bring up is that we are going to hopefully receive a lot of great feedback, a lot of great comments, and then we will be taking notes. Our consultant is watching live right now as well, and we will be providing an update on Together Twinsburg by Friday, kind of summarizing and replying back to anything we hear tonight. So, great. Okay.
Thank you, Mrs. Ziegler. One other thing I'd like to bring up before we start is there are going to be there's another public hearing on July 9th, and that'll be for ordinance 77, 2024, which is a rezoning for property on 1816 Aurora Road. Then there's also a rezoning on ordinance 79, 2024. So, in a month, we'll have a public hearing for those prior to having them so that they can be put forward to the ballot as well. That being said, Shannon, would you call the first person for audience participation for the public hearing?
First, we have Kathy Oma.
Please state your name and your address for the record.
Sure. Hi, my name is Kathy Ouma. My address is 1668 Bridget Lane. My husband, Dr. Jeffrey Ouma, and I are beekeepers in Twinsburg. We are concerned about the current beekeeping proposal. Because of our bees, our garden is extremely bountiful. Because of this bounty, we are literally able to feed members of Twinsburg and beyond. Imagine how many gardens and how many community members our bees alone are feeding. We are concerned the current proposal is a result of fear and misunderstanding and is unrealistic. We do not think there should be a limit on the amount of beehives a beekeeper can maintain in Twinsburg. Rather, we believe the focus should be on maintaining healthy bees and educated beekeepers. Beekeepers should take a beginner's class. Fresh water should be accessible and within close proximity to hives. Africanized colonies should not be allowed. Varroa mites should be monitored and treated, and beekeeping equipment should be maintained in good condition. Bees travel up to 5 miles per day to forage, pollinate, and collect pollen, so they travel throughout most of Twinsburg. Our bees are helping to keep you and your family fed. Unfortunately, because of a lack of bee knowledge, we believe you will limit the amount of hives that can be on one property. If so, a more reasonable approach is to allow the amount of hives per square feet of the lot size. We are requesting the verbiage in the ordinance be changed to mimic the ordinance of such cities like Cleveland and Lakewood. These cities are allowed 1 hive per 2,500 square feet and 2,400 square feet respectively. This would also provide more consistency. For example, the current Twinsburg proposal would allow me to have 3 hives. Our lot is 0.47 acres. Someone with a much smaller lot could have the same amount of hives, and if we had just a tiny bit more land, we could have 5 hives. The current proposal is uneven allocation of a basic human need, bees. How do you anticipate grandfathering would work? When the ordinance is completed and effective, would beekeepers with more hives than the ordinance states be grandfathered in without having to kill their bees? When there are rules and rules for the rules, there is a deterrent to even want to become a beekeeper. Beekeeping is an art. 1 hive can quickly turn to 3 or more or 0. The current proposal is discouraging. We do not feel like this should even be up for discussion. Bees don't make noise. They are natural inhabitants of our environment, and we must have bees to survive. When the rules begin to cause strangulation, the desire to want to be a good steward and maintain bees dwindles. These rules around bees could force less beekeepers, which can ultimately cause food insecurity. Bees are unlike any other animal or insect. If we do not have bees, we do not have life. Thanks.
Thank you
Thank you
very
very
much.
much.
Next, we have Lori Facina.
Thank you, Shannon. Lori Facina, 2950 Cannon Road. Tonight does not constitute a public hearing, not only because you didn't do the 30 days, the time was changed at least twice. And I don't know how many of my neighbors and friends received this, either beginning as early as last Thursday through the weekend, but this was an insert inside the sewer bill. And the big notice on the front is chipping. On the back, tiny little notice that says, public hearing, be informed, your voice counts, June 11th, 2024, at 7 o'clock p.m. in council chambers. So not only did you miss the 30 days, but the time was changed at least twice. And that's discouraging, especially to my older neighbors who don't go on social media. This would be the only way they would know about this. And they get it 3 days beforehand. And if they had shown up, or if they show up tonight at 7 o'clock, the public hearing's done. But the other reason why there shouldn't be a public hearing tonight is that I attended the Planning Commission meeting last week, last Monday, June 3rd, and I attended it because I had seen the agenda. And on the agenda, our city planner was noted as giving a speech about the zoning code. And I scratched my head and I went, why is she still going to be up there talking about the zoning code? 3 people spoke regarding the zoning code from the city, and then when it came time for public participation, I stood up and I said, perhaps I am perplexed here. I addressed it to the chairman of the Planning Commission. I said, when did you send the final draft of the zoning code update to City Hall? And he looked to his right and he looked to his left. There were only 2 out of the 5 people on the dais. And he said, we haven't sent it over yet. I said, well, that's troubling to me because there's already been a first reading of this proposal. And in the printout that you put in the back of the room today, you mention an Exhibit A. What is Exhibit A? If Exhibit A is the whole zoning code, it's not complete. And you need to, I guess you need to be reminded of the section of our charter that says that our Planning Commission has all power with respect to land use. And they are to review and recommend to council. So I'm terribly troubled that we've already had 1 reading and you plan on having a second reading tonight. It was really awful to see that there was a map up front here with errors in it. And we were told that we're on draft number 5, and there could be a number 6 and possibly even a number 7. All of that should have been done before we ever showed up here tonight. And I really would like someone to address that at some point this evening. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Shannon, next speaker?
Next, we have Bob Thews.
Good evening, Bob Thews, 2229 Demi Drive in Twinsburg, Ohio. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I want to make a comment. At least to us, okay, from the outside people, this thing appears rushed, and as a result of that, I really haven't had a chance to look much through the zoning, but I did get one thing that I looked at, and I saw that the new zoning code is proposing using what they call an MPUD, okay, as a mixed-use development code. This code allows 34 uses. So it's it's basically, in essence, it will allow just about anything without without the vote of the citizens. So basically, wherever this MPUD is, it's going to allow anything to happen. Now, just I'll put together a scenario, okay, of what this 34 things allows. Okay, you could have a church next to a recreational marijuana store, next to a strip joint, next to a child care center. My opinion is that MPUD is not zoning at all. It's elimination of zoning. And some of the conditional uses, some are conditional uses and would need council approval. However, in the past, this council and its predecessors' approval of like the golf club that was ultimately will cost us over $20 million, and there's no revenue plan to offset its cost, and to boot, it's not even built on city property. The map of the zones is still not complete. We did see it, but previously displayed the area at the corner of Route 91 and Glenwood as an MPUD, and it does it out there right now. That one displays that. We voted 3 times in the last several years not to commercialize that and develop that area. Now it can be done without, if this goes to an MPUD, it can be done without a vote and in opposition to the will of the citizens. This MPUD code needs to be either eliminated or severely limited in usage. It's really a choice that we have no time to review. We really had no time to review this document before it's going to be voted on. This looks like the kind of what I call a fast shuffle to get things through, stuff that the citizens would not normally approve of. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bob.
Next, we have Lynn Clark.
Good evening. Lynn Clark, Old Mill Road, as you might recall. I've been looking out at this whole process and have been involved in, I think, just about every single one of the public meetings that have been held. And what I've heard, the reason is purely because our code is out of date. So when we say we're going to update things, we've got to look towards the future, not the past. So I haven't been through everything, and I certainly in version 4, and I certainly haven't been through 5, 6, 7, however many versions of this reality there's going to be. So my comments are primarily focused on what I've seen in version 4, particularly as it relates to the environmental standards. Now, the other issue, and I've spoken to several people represented in this room about this historically is we've got conflicting land uses. Industrial right next to residential. That's a problem. It has been a problem. It's been identified as a problem, not just by me, not just by the neighbors of those industrial properties, but also by our comprehensive plan. Both the current plan, the previous plan, and I think the plan before that. And I haven't seen anything here that says those issues are going to be addressed. And that's very troubling. Particularly when we go back and it says, part of the new code says, hey, the intention is to help protect public health, safety, and welfare. If you build a factory next to a residential house, that does not help the welfare of that property owner, that individual landowner that's put their whole life savings into that. It certainly doesn't enhance the quality within the city. Preserve and enhance environmental quality. That's where it can directly connects into sustainability. And I'll just remind you all very quickly, been a practicing engineer for 50 years. Most of that time has been dedicated to environmental pollution protection. Oh, and it also has right here, assuring compatibility of uses and practices within districts, and that should also be across districts. And don't forget, hey, we have industrial districts butting up against residential districts. Whether they happen to be in the city or the township, we should still have consideration for those folks. Now, alignment of all of these changes that are being made seems very feeble and absent, and I'm going to touch on a couple of things. In last week's meeting, the city planner stated that the city is pretty well built out. One of the questions that I've been asking kind of continuously is what impact is all this projected future growth going to have on our infrastructure? Are the sewers signed appropriately? What is the additional BOD loading on Tinker's Creek? We already know Tinker's Creek struggles to meet water quality standards.
1 minute.
So that seems like a fundamental question that should be answered now and not sometime down the road. So the impact on our water treatment, water supply, all of our underground utilities, on our floodplain, that should really be identified. Now, what I thought I heard the city planner say last week is it's going to be so small you won't even notice it, but I see the pictures of all these buildings planned, and there seems to be a direct disconnect there. Now, sustainability is kind of the cornerstone, at least on the letterhead, of our last comprehensive plan. Now, sustainability has not been defined in this new, at least version 4. But
Time.
many of the experts are using a definition, something like the ability to wisely use our resources now so future generations can still enjoy the environment without compromise.
Mr. Clark, your time's expired.
There was no time stated up front.
It's 5 minutes. It's on the, sir, your time's expired.
Okay. Mr. Fury,
Yes, sir.
you should have stated up front, there was a 5-minute limit. I could have gotten to the point. The point is, hey, we've got a lot of issues associated with sustainability, and this is not anywhere as close. This is anti-sustainability.
Time's up. Please move on. Thank
I've
you.
got one more thing to say. And that is, you know, in the environmental performance standards, it said there's only 3 intentions. Now, our existing environmental performance standards have 8. Now, how do you ever say, I'm going to reduce the standards and promote sustainability?
Sir, it's not a back and forth, it's a public hearing. You got
I
to make your
know,
statement.
and you're cutting me off, denying me
I'm-
my freedom of speech.
Well, I assure you that our charter shows that public participation is 5 minutes. I've checked it with the law director before the meeting. It's our standard policy. Your time's expired. Thank you. Is there anybody else, Shannon?
Next, we have Emily Mueller, I believe.
Hello, my name is Emily Mueller, 5867 Manchester Road, but I'm not actually a Twinsburg resident. I'm in South Akron. I'm here on behalf of beekeepers. I was reached out. I work for Ohio State Beekeepers Association as a traveling speaker. I'm also a certified master beekeeper, as well as a bunch of different credentials. I run a honeybee rescue down in South Akron. So I was just kind of here to let you guys know that some of the ordinances, rules that you're putting on the beekeepers restrict them from being able to legally follow the Ohio Revised Code, and also Ohio's best management practices, which when you register your apiary with the state of Ohio, you have to be legally following them. So like if a beekeeper has 5 hives and they're 5 established colonies, sometimes the weather will change and there's a mass blooming, and so some of the colonies have to be split. It's the natural reproduction of honeybees, and so if they do not split those colonies, what will happen is they will throw swarms out into the neighborhood, and so then you will have some beekeepers that won't be able to control their swarms, because by limiting them to those 5 hives and not allowing a temporary home for splits, those splits would fly off into your community and then house themselves up into people's walls. And I mean, I've cut them out of everything. I could tell you, outhouses and all sorts of stuff. So it's my suggestion that whatever your maximum hive amount is, one, do know that honeybees can only survive on the resources within a 5-mile radius. So a beekeeper couldn't technically even have like 20 hives if they're on a small lot, because when they're traveling up to 5 miles from there, they wouldn't be able to feed themselves. So they would naturally die. So it's not really a fear that they're going to have too many bees, because the bees naturally won't be able to have enough food. And then here within the city of Twinsburg, one of the highest pollination points for honeybees are maple trees and different trees, catalpa trees, all of the flowering, blooming cranberries and things that you have decorative. None of those would actually bloom if you don't have honeybees, one in particular, but there's over 500 different species of stinging insects in Northeast Ohio. So when people do get stung or bit by an insect, it's very hard to identify that it's honeybees. However, honeybees are typically the culprit of that, because people can see physical hives in the backyard. What you don't know is that there are hundreds and thousands all over the place in the ground in different crevices and cracks. Wasps are decomposers, so they actually aren't the ones that are on the flowers. The ones that are going to your pop cans and at the fairgrounds and the trash cans, those are actually yellow jackets. Those are not honeybees. However, they do sting, and so people naturally think bee, and so they assume that honeybees are not safe, because any type of flying insect that could sting you becomes a threat to people who are not aware of the differences of those different insects. So I am just here on behalf to answer any questions that you would have. I did send a couple of emails, I don't know where Rebecca went, to you guys to let you know. And some of the laws that you have in there are repetitive. We don't actually have Africanized genetics up here in Ohio. They can't survive our winters. So it's not, I mean, you can include that, but it's kind of a waste of time to include the information that's unnecessary. Also the water source, that's under Ohio's best management practices. So you could just say that the beekeeper has to follow Revised Code 909 in addition to Ohio's best management practices, and that would cover all your bases as far as how far from a property line it could be, how many hives they could actually manage because of food resources. And then also there's a state inspector who has county inspectors. Randy Katz is your county inspector. He was the original email source that came through on the email that was sent out, and he goes around and he inspects the over 250 different apiaries here in Summit County to make sure you're not spreading spreading pest and disease, and that you don't have Africanized or aggressive colonies. And then if there is an aggressive colony, there's an actual protocol that happens. You have to reach out to the county inspector, have them come out, and the first thing they do is they talk to the beekeeper and they tell the beekeeper, hey, we think your hive is aggressive. Typically, just that interaction gets the beekeeper to say, yes, I agree with you, and I don't want nasty bees, and then they go through the process of requeening. If the beekeeper, fights back or doesn't want to, then they reach out to the state apiarist, and the state apiarist will make a visit. The state apiarist, as well as the county apiarist, can act as police when it comes to matters of bees, and therefore they would be able to go onto the property and remove the aggressive hive. So all those things can be pursued in legal matters, just so you know, if it ever comes down to a situation where you do have a beekeeper that is not following the Ohio's best management practices. So, but if you have any questions, you're welcome to ask.
Thank you very much. Very interesting.
Next, we have Sue Clark.
Sure. I was already.
Good evening, council, mayor, law director. I made some copies of what I'm going to talk about tonight. Is it okay to give these to Mrs. Collins to share with you?
Sure, Mrs. Clark.
I would like to bring it to your attention, pattern districting. There are no statewide laws related to pattern districting because zoning regulations are an exercise of the police power granted by local governments. That is why it's so important for us to make sure our zoning is correct. On that first page at the bottom, you guys will see that I reached out to Senator Blessing's office for him to have his legal department define pattern districting, zoning, districts, whatever you want to call it. The reason that I did that was because in one of the other packets, you're going to see that he actually attended a public hearing in Marysville. So that, I just want you guys to know how I got there. As most of you know, I've been following Marysville and Portsmouth zoning code, and I'd like to bring to your attention what's been happening there. In Marysville, back in August of '23, they had a public hearing on rental properties where residents came out and spoke about rental homes, accessory dwellings, and etc. As you know, corporations and LLCs are buying up property for rental property. The problem is, when you have an issue, you have no way of getting a hold of these entities. So I was surprised to see there was no section in our code for this issue. I've looked at other communities, and they have written extensive policies on rental properties. I think that we should look at what they are doing and try to incorporate that into our code. I actually called Senator Blessing himself, and in Hamilton County, their resources on EMS, police, everything went up. And the problem was with the LLCs, there's no way to go back and hold those landlords accountable for what they're doing. We have rental properties in our neighborhood, they're all over, but if we're going to talk about doing rental buildings with mixed use, I really think it's something that we need to take a hard look at and make sure that we cover that in the code. In Portsmouth, they're having issues with drug recovery housing. As some of you know, that's what brought me to start coming to council meetings, and is still something that I follow on a regular basis. It's not because I don't want people to get help. What I learned through that experiences was that people prey on addictions. As you can see, Portsmouth was experiencing those issues with folks running these homes, not taking care of their property. I'm aware of the American Disability Act, but I also know that there are House bills sitting on the floor to make sure these issues don't take over neighborhoods. I would like to see something in our code that addresses these. In some of the codes in Portsmouth, they actually take in money from these facilities, from insurance companies. Okay, so how are we handling that? Because in a residential area, to me, that's a business, especially if you're going to dispense narcotics out of a locked cart. That's a business. Not that we don't want to see these people get help, but we need to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to make sure that we are equipped to handle whatever goes on in those places. I've spoken to many people in this, both recovering and not recovering. One of the ladies I spoke to actually had her son in an addiction center where they paid money. What happened was he'd get clean, then when he was at the end of his money, they would hook him He would go back on the insurance plan, and what happened was, she ended up losing her son Colin to this. This is an epidemic. It's not something you guys are going to solve here. It's something that is still very passionate to me, and outside of these four walls, I'm trying to help on state and local. I'm just asking you guys to really do your research, and let's try to do that as well, and maybe look at some of the things that Portsmouth, now you're going to see an article in there, they actually tried to put a money monetary on it, which they can't do, which we all know can't be done through the Disabilities Act. But it is something that we need to really take into consideration. I would be glad to share more information if needed. You will find in those packets information that back up what I was speaking about. However, I would like you to slow down and reconsider putting this on the November ballot. You are asking us to vote on something that you are still in the process of writing. We don't even have a filed draft. I was going through draft 4 and was sent draft 5 yesterday at 3:50. We have waited a long time. What's an extra few months to make sure that we get this right? It is so important to us, not just to the city, not just to the residents, not just to the developers. You guys have ended up in court over things like this. Now is the time to make sure we cover it. And I have watched Zone Co, and I have gone to where they have been, and I have looked at what they're doing there. We don't need to reinvent the wheels, guys. We got it right in front of us. We just need to slow down and put a little bit of extra work into it, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thanks, Mrs. Clark.
And next, we have Ian Jones.
Ian, before you speak, probably a third of you have come into the room since this meeting was already started, because there was a mix-up. It said 6:30 some places, 7 in others. So I'm basically starting the 7 o'clock public hearing. If you came in and would like to address council and the mayor and the law director and the planning people, just when we run out of people who are already signed up, I'm good. Then just come up to the mic if you haven't spoken already, okay? All right, sir, go ahead.
All right, my name is Ian Jones. I'm at 9528 Ridge Court. I'm a member of the working group as we've been going through the zoning code. I just want to say Rebecca's been doing a great job, I think. And I think this whole project is a big undertaking, so it's a lot to manage, and I think everyone's been working real hard, and I think the results in each draft have been getting better and better, and I think as a result of all the feedback that the public gives each time, there are tweaks. So I think seeing multiple drafts is just reflective of how the city has been responsive to input that they've received. That being said, I have my own little tweaks I want to make, but if anything, I want to encourage more walkability in the downtown district by reducing or making optional parking requirements in that area only, and just for a way to bring more flexibility in the downtown, so we end up with spaces that feel more like, I don't know, Hudson or Manway or Chagrin Falls, and less like auto-oriented like Streetsboro or Aurora in a lot of ways. So I think we have an opportunity there. I know a lot of feedback from people has been about the 2014 comprehensive plan, and I think that's a great opportunity for us to, like, when we think about updating the zoning code, think about that comprehensive plan being next. Completely makes sense. So I think that's a great feedback. And I also think when we, hopefully, because this is long overdue, just because the zoning, what we know about zoning now versus what the current code has, current trends are much better than they were with arbitrary numbers and kind of the errors there in the previous code. I think we should also look at how we can address other items in like city ordinances to help support the new zoning code if it passes. So one of them that I can think of is like there's no permitted like street parking anywhere in the city. So when we look at if we do have like a new downtown area, you know, eventually if that possibility comes along with that area being redeveloped to allow, you know, street parking and to make little tweaks and be cognizant of that. But overall, yeah, I look forward to the drafts being continually updated and ultimately voting for it in November. And I think, yeah, overall it's been a great process and yeah, looking forward to it. So, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you.
That's all we have initially signed up.
Okay, is there anybody else that would like to, come on? Would you please state your name and address?
Sorry.
It's okay. They're
Hi,
movable.
I'm Anita Magavac. I live at 10080 Glen Eagle Lane. I'm the president of the Glen Eagle Condo Association. I've been a resident here for 32 years. I'm here to discuss the plot of land at 91 in Glenwood. I have numerous concerns about that affecting our development specifically. There is a watershed behind our property, and that watershed affects 2 large ponds. Houses on that ponds are nearly $1 million homes. That watershed area needs to be evaluated before any changes to the code needs to occur. I have been here at City Council and have spoken with 3 previous mayors regarding the same issue. I am very concerned for our members of our street, the value of their homes, and I would really like to consider that if indeed the zoning is going to change, then the Army Corps of Engineers needs to look at the watershed area starting at the Corbett Farms, going all the way down, all the way down into the golf course. And thanks. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would anybody else like to address council? Rebecca, would you like to make a closing argument or comment? Sorry, just came out that way. I have too many law schools, not too many law school shows. Respond back on to the site by Friday, as you said. Okay. Well, if there's nobody else that would like to address council on this matter,
I just want to thank you all for coming out. I know that it's a beautiful night outside, and this is why we're doing this, exactly why you were all here, is to get your feedback. And to Ian's point, the reason that there are so many changes, and there are, you know, the 4th and then the 5th, the 6th that you talk about, is because of all of the people that are asking for changes. And they're doing a great job at, you know, listening and, you know, attending to your needs. So I want to thank them for that. I want to thank you all for showing up. It's nice to see so many people here with this. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, the public hearing is closed.